I finally bought some land down near Pine Springs, Texas I had my eyes on. I had property down in Washington, but I felt like I needed to get away from the heavily populated coastal areas, so I sold it. Plus, a few buddies of mine from back when I used to work ATF also made the move and recommended it to me. Figured the fresh air would do me good. I got lucky enough to find a place that didn't have limestone or heavy clay. Almost as soon as I got the keys, I went to City Hall to get my permit and rented an excavator to dig a small rectangle pit. Couldn't dig too deep though, as this was Texas. I just needed a good hiding place for the time capsule. At least, that's what I figured it was when it came to me. Back when I had a smaller place out in Washington, it came to me via FedEx freight shipping with a note attached in an envelope. It was from my Uncle Rico. The note just simply read, "This has been in our family for a long time. Please take good care of this package. It's more important to you than you know, but you'll know when the time comes. Don't let it fall into the wrong hands." Uncle Rico. This was the giant black metal case that my Uncle Rico, or Rick as he was called, used to keep hidden away in his little self-built workshop on in the back of his home. I had always just assumed it was for equipment or something, but it looked a bit different than the other toolboxes as it had rounded edges. Uncle Rick would get real irritated by us if we tried to take a closer look at it as kids. We figured that maybe he played in a secret band, and this is where he hid his drum set. Maybe it was where he hid all the dead bodies of the guys who were dumb enough to flirt with our Aunt Cassie. Whatever it was, it seemed no one knew about it other than one other stranger. This strange man always seemed to put my uncle on edge the few times I remember him coming by. As I recall, he seemed like a disarming gentleman. He usually wore jeans with a fancy leather belt and a collared shirt with a bolo tie. He looked like an older Tom Selleck. I never did catch much of their conversation, other than the man seemed to be after the box. I once asked my uncle who the man was, and he snapped at me, "No one for you to worry about, mijo." My uncle was always good to me though, always sticking his neck out and defending me. He always told me that no matter where I was or how old I got, he would look out for me. When I was in high school, I once got into a fight with a couple of guys who had jumped my cousin. The police knew my uncle, and as he lived nearby, they drove me to his place, bloody, in the back of their patrol car. "Just the way it is, Tio," I had told him without making eye contact. "It is what it is, and you can't change it." "Hey," he snapped at me, "look at me. We decide our fate, alight. The future ain't set in stone. We can forge our own destiny." It was at this point he decided to give me my father's old Navy dog tags and told me to put it somewhere where they'll always come back to me. I had thought that they were lost. Now that I had my uncle's old box, I spent quite a bit of time studying the thing, though I was careful to let anyone know about it considering the note. At least I figured I would hold off telling anyone until I got to the bottom of what was inside and what the note meant. I did find that it had a few handles on the side, but I would imagine it would take a couple of men to carry it. The most surprising find, however, was a compartment on the right side that popped out with a small computer touchscreen and tilted to show upwards. I was further surprised to find that this tablet turned on. Upon activation, there on the blue screen was two sets of numbers. One I figured to be a date with, year, month, and day, and the other looked like a timer. The date on the screen was set for January 1st, 2020 at 7 a.m. in the morning. Either this date was seriously off, or this was set to open in another year and a quarter. Shortly after receiving the thing and promptly moving it to my garage, odd things began to happen. I noticed a couple of different vans which I didn't recognize would park on the streets outside my home. They didn't seem to be friends of neighbors and never stayed for too long. My lights would flicker every once in a while, and the video feed for my security system would disrupt. Out of a sense of uneasiness, I began to search around my home. I'm not sure what I was looking for, really. Then I found it. An odd little device that looked like a lighter, hidden in a little mound under my front yard bushes. I didn't recognize it and had no idea what it could be. I tried doing an initial Google search, but nothing came up. I sent a picture of it to a buddy of mine who usually knows about this kind of stuff, and he couldn't find anything either. I was able to pry it open with a screwdriver, however. I pulled what looked to be a connecting wire. After that, The light stopped flickering, and the feed remained steady. My fear led me to think that this could have been some kind of jammer or something that disrupts electronics, but it seemed like a pretty advanced one if so. I kept a better lookout around the house, while also toying around more with the computer on the mystery box. What I then found took the situation to a whole new level. I found a selection labeled Life Support. I found various options under a Health tab. One option was labeled Health Regeneration. This showed a status of 99.9%. When I clicked on a vitals icon with a heart, I heard what I could only describe as a heartbeat. Something was alive and healing in this box. Even more abiding, what was it healing from? Was it some kind ancient alien warrior who was locked in battle, whose wounds were so devastating that they needed thousands of years to heal? Who could I turn to? Who could I trust? It was at this time I made the decision to move. For a year or so, it was peaceful out here. It took a while to adjust to the humidity from the dry heat that I was used to, but fortunately I don't have breathing issues. I didn't let my guard down though. I began preparations. Exactly what I was preparing for, I have no clue, but I felt driven by some instinct that a storm was coming. I set up security cameras all along the property. Place itself was pretty sizable, though coverable with good surveillance, despite a tree line in the distance, in the back. And out there I had a wildlife cam. The cameras themselves would feed to an application on my phone, and I could switch between them. Nothing fancy. The thing I liked most about this place, however, was an older feature. The 2 bedrooms had an adjoining closet, which I figured might come in handy. I took the liberty of adding a few more funhouse features and a small shed out back near the tree line. Then, of course, I made sure I was well armed. If these guys, whoever they are, had the capabilities to disrupt any electronics with small remote devices, there's no telling the type of firepower and protection they would have. I had a few rifles, even an old Winchester, and a neat knife collection, but I figured I'd stick with my go-to AR-15 for mid-range engagement and have my cold steel knife on me when things finally go down. December 31st rolled around. This would be the first year in a while that I stayed up to watch the ball drop. I stayed up all night in anticipation of the capsule opening the following morning. I probably wouldn't be going to bed after that either, though. I also felt something was coming, though. And they did. I got an alert on my phone right around 6 o'clock from my wildlife cam. I checked. There were 2 men, armed with SIG MPXs and casually dressed, though a bit bulky. They didn't look like a hit squad at all. In fact, it irked me that they were walking at a casual pace and something was very wrong with their eyes. I sprang to my feet, grabbed my AR-15, which was at the ready, holstered my cold steel knife and Glock, and headed for one of the small compartments I made in my bedroom. Lights went out. I expected them to. I could vaguely hear them approaching due to the crunching of the bark I laid down. They stepped onto my patio and approached the front door. They would all breach from the same place. They broke my door handle and came in, both through the front. I heard them casually walk in with heavy footsteps. From the sounds of it, they split up. One set of footsteps headed to the kitchen, and the other was coming down the hallway slowly. The steps coming down the hallway bypassed the first room and was lumbering towards the back room where I was hiding. I slowed by breathing. I heard the door creaking open. They stepped around, clearing it. I peeked out and in one quick motion, grabbed the intruder from behind, put him in a headlock, put him on his knees, and stabbed him in the chest. The puncture felt off. There was an odd odor and a slimy substance as I retracted my knife. I could feel more momentous power building up on the intruder as he slowly began to wrestle his way up. As he got to his feet, he flipped me over. I was now on my back. He was quick to mount me and put his powerful hands around my neck. Before he could disarm me, I quickly plunged my knife into his chest and pushed with all of my might as I stared into the black abyss that were his eyes. He didn't seem human. As soon as I felt his strength fading, I quickly rolled him on his back. He spit up a white substance and convulsed. I didn't have time to make sure it was dead, as I heard running coming down the hallway. Two went quickly into the connected closets. A barrage of bullets came slicing through the walls. I kept my head down as I scrambled through the room. Passing through the hallway, I fired off multiple rounds as the second intruder popped out of the back room. He seemingly felt the power of the rounds, but took the close-quarter shots like a man possessed. I didn't stop to find out why. I needed to head for the door and for the tree line. I quickly went through the kitchen and out the back door. I hauled ass for the tree line. No sooner had I reached the first tree when I heard a couple of loud pops from gunshots, with the latter being accompanied by a sharp pain in my back. I went to the ground and tried to take cover behind the trees, pruned. I could hear more rounds popping my way, but it seemed he lost sight. I saw his silhouette crouched in the doorway, steadied my aim with my rifle as best as I could, and fired return rounds on full auto. He went back and down, but I didn't let up my fire until he started to convulse. I watched for a while, but he didn't get back up. Time felt like it was moving slow, but the whole ordeal only took a matter of minutes. I forced myself onto my feet, the pain still stabbing my back. I was getting lightheaded. There was quite a bit of blood I could see. The sun was beginning to rise. Out in the distance, I saw a van parked a little in the tree cover. I hobbled over there with my rifles at the ready. No movement. It must have only been a two-man team with nobody left in the van. I was mistaken. With no notice, I was lifted into the air and sent flying with a furious force against a nearby tree. Landing on the ground with yet another pain in my back, I looked up, and there was the old stranger from my childhood. He hadn't aged a day. "Come now, must I incapacitate you, or are we going to sit down and hash this out like civilized men?" I frantically searched for my rifle, but it was yards away. I reached for my Glock, took aim and fired as he began to march forward like a juggernaut force of nature. I flinched in a more human manner, but took it supernaturally all the same. I raised his hand with a humming noise, reverberating from a wrist device. All the bullets stopped in midair and dropped. "Oh, I assure you, as opposed to my associates, I am very much so flesh and blood, just like you," he said as he grabbed me and threw me like a rag doll. Luckily this time, I didn't hit a tree and managed to hold on to my Glock, but I still felt pain all throughout my body. Running on pure adrenaline and survival instincts, I forced myself up and ran for my shed as cover. He continued to pursue in his leisurely manner. He seemed in no real hurry. "I'm simply here for the box," he shouted as I ran. "You don't know what horrors await its contents were to wake up. When you received that box, it changed your destiny. You were never meant to have it. You were never meant to come here." I rested my back on the shed wall and breathed heavily. I looked around the corner to see him still pursuing. I needed to break his line of sight. I needed to keep moving. I headed for the garage. "It's not part of the plan, you see," he shouted as he corrected his course to follow this hobbling man. "It's an anomaly that must be contained, an error in a cascade of algorithms that constitute existence itself. Why, there's no telling what kind of issues this little bug in the system could snowball into. You understand, I hope now?" I forced the garage door open and ran through. I wasn't sure where I was going or what I would do. Luckily, I had my keys on me, so I jumped in my truck and started it up. "Very well, sir," he shouted. "If you insist on not telling me where the capsule is, then you leave me no choice but to revert to more unpleasant security measure." I couldn't leave the box here, though, and flee. Maybe I would drive some ways down to lose him and double back on foot. I pressed the key fob to raise the garage door, and there he was, standing at the ready. I punched the gas, but he ran up on top of the roof of my truck and clung on like a cat. I quickly turned the truck at the end of the driveway, but he reached in and grabbed my neck. "You are the chaos in a perfect system," he shouted. I drove through the tree line with all my might until one tree seemed to scrap him off. My truck ran into another. I struggled my way out of the passenger side of my truck, and there he was getting to his feet. I was quick to fire a hailstorm with my Glock into his head, which finally put him down. I watched as the deep, dark pools of his monstrous eyes faded, though he still had that unsettling, pleasant grin. I guess even invincible old men have their limits. I fired the rest of my clip in his head for good measure. I went back to the van, circled to the back, and opened the back doors. The lights came on. I was flabbergasted as I attempted to adjust my eyes to what I was seeing. While the van itself was just a plain white ordinary van, but the inside seemed like something from a sci-fi movie. On one side, there seemed to be 3 large panels of what appeared to be monitors. They had a logo of an infinity symbol in front of a globe. Around the trimmings read, Continuum Repair Operations and Navigation Office, CRONO. Even in the future, the government still uses creative acronyms. At least I assumed they were from the future. To the other side of the van, however, I saw another time capsule, just like the one I have. This one, however, was opened and was floating. I peered in to see a bed-like cushion, so there probably was someone then in mine. Who was this one meant for, though? The pain from the gunshot was beginning to take its toll. I should probably call a hospital. But how would I explain the dead bodies in my house to EMTs? I dragged myself back into the house to see if I could find some way to retrieve the bullet. I wasn't actually even sure where it could be or if it went deeper into my body. Then I looked up at the clock. I suddenly realized that a lot more time had passed since the incident. It was only a few minutes till 7 a.m. The capsule would soon open. I made my way back out to the area where I hid the thing, removed the wooden frame covered in grass that hid the pit, and instantly saw the little monitor on the side of the capsule start to light up. It was almost time, only a few seconds left. 3, 2, 1. The door on the case popped open. What I saw both horrified me and enlightened me. Everything fell into place. I looked at the screen. Status: puncture to the right abdomen, 100% regenerated. Projectile removed. No scar tissue. Subject preserved. He was sleeping and breathing normally. He still had on the same clothes from the day he went in. I carried him to the house and laid him on the bed. Now his. He would begin his life where it left off. Figured it would be best, however, if we didn't meet. Probably would have no effect. It was just a precaution after having watched a whole lot of sci-fi movies. Then I went back out to the van. I stared at the black box in box for a while. This will either be my last hope or my coffin. 1,000 thoughts raced into my mind. How did I know this would work? What if this creates another timeline and things go completely differently? Still, I worked up the courage. After toying around with the monitor on the other capsule, I believe I was able to program it to surgically remove the bullet from me and repair the damaged tissue. Then, I found out how to program it to send it through time. I put a delay on the launch date and time thought, come to think of it, I'm not sure what the proper term for time travel is. Launch, execution. With the remaining strength I had, I quickly printed out a FedEx shipping label, addressed to my Uncle Rico's old place. Figured it might take some time getting there, so I set the time travel trip to initiate in 2 weeks. Once initiated, the capsule would go back 43 years. Uncle Rico would stumble across it, wondering what it was and why the hell it came to him. I had to be sure he would watch over it, so in an envelope, I also placed my father's old Navy dog tags with a letter that read, "Hey Uncle Rick, I'm not sure if this package will ever get to you, or if you will even understand what it is. But it's real important to me that you keep this hidden away and pass it on to your nephew one day, once he's old enough. When the time is right, he'll know what to do. I regret not telling you this in person, but thank you for everything you've done for me." I figured it best not to sign my name. He'd probably think whoever sent it was screwing with him. Still, at least the Navy dog tag should be enough to convince him to hold on the capsule. With the last of my strength, I dragged the package out to the roadside, where it was sure to be picked up, settled in for a long nap, and shut the lid. Tangent thoughts raced through my head. Will this work? It had to have worked, or else I wouldn't have received the capsule in the first place. Well, what if I just create an alternate reality where I die in this coffin? What if I have to take a leak? Then silence and an overwhelming sense of peace. I didn't notice time go by at all in my stasis. I just woke up in my bed, found a few dead bodies around my place, looked out the window, and saw the container sitting roadside, ready to be picked up. I felt great, actually. That capsule must have made some augmentations because I felt unbelievable. Cleanup wouldn't be easy, that's for sure. How the hell do I get rid of a van that looks like the space shuttle inside? Or presumably 2 robot bodies and 1 superhuman? I don't know if whoever they were would ever come back, but for now I have my life back, and I'll be waiting. I plan on forging my own destiny,